Hey, and welcome to another episode. Have you ever thought that maybe you just went through too much adversity in life? Have you ever thought that maybe people aren't going to understand your background and that you couldn't possibly lead people? Or you want to get into leadership, but you just don't know where to start? Well, that's why I'm excited to introduce Hannah Bauer. She is the founder and CEO of HEARTnomics Enterprises, a leadership and organizational transformational firm that integrates operational excellence with human centered design. As a Lean Six Sigma black belt, a Baldrige examiner, and a Maxwell Leadership faculty member, Hannah equips leaders to achieve transformation through love and excellence, valuing people while driving measurable performance. Her resilience is a personal story, shaped by surviving childhood heart disease and pioneering a heart procedure that redefined her purpose. That breakthrough became the blueprint for Heartnomics, where she helps organizations restore rhythm, reclaim human potential, and lead with both heart and precision. So, Hannah, welcome to the show. So, just wondering if you could just take a quick moment and tell us just a little bit more about yourself and how we got here today.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. Well, really, it's been a journey, a lot of adversity when I started. What brought me actually to my leadership methods is going through the surviving a heart condition, which is at the time diagnosed as a terminal condition, no cure, and having to overcome that as a kid, making sense of it didn't make any sense. But really, what I got to observe, since I had a lot of time on my hands being on a hospital bed many times was really seeing the love, the people, a lot of really not even understanding what was going on, but really getting to experience love, the support systems, but along with that, the excellence that came with it. When we met before, we talked about the many failure points that happen in trying to come to a cure that didn't yet exist. So as obviously I'm here coming up with the medical community coming up with a pioneering surgery inspired me to want to do the same for others. So I wanted to serve. Once I was kind of got my normal card, like they said, the physical, like I don't have this heart ailment anymore. I wanted to go out and serve, and really that was the only example I had was service in front of me all the time, and that's what I wanted to get back. So I started doing health community clinics outside in the community. I got certified. I was very young. I was like 16, 17 when I started doing this. 19, going into the community, doing trainings, doing not only public health, but going in and overall public community health. I was actually even certified with the World Health Organization as one of their youngest ones to be able to bring in. And all of it went back to what I had received. So I just wanted to pay it forward in a sense, make sense and make it valuable what I did. So fast forward as an entrepreneur, did the same thing with the customers. Part of where I got to serve was an educational publishing company. And I could really relate with that because it's about helping the kids catch up. The ones that did not have access or that were missing some standards. Well, because a lot of my story was catching up. I had to catch up from not being able to go to school, from feeling always behind. But really I was able to serve not only in that level because I understood the pain, but be able to later on with having gone through disruption and with technology and how the whole environment looked to also do the same with other companies, to be able to do that with my peers. And now I get to do that with other leaders that are facing the same thing. So it's at the end of the day, it's like, hey, there's pain and we can serve and I want to be there. And how can we continue to not only serve each other, but be able to grow through it all. So that's what got me here.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. I kind of want to go back to when you were a little girl and you had a diagnosed heart condition and you saw service in the hospital.
Yes.
So what was one of the defining moments that you can first remember, like, hey, you know what? Service is what I want to do. Was there like one particular instance that stood out to you?
Yes, actually, there in the hospital, it gets very lonely. The only times that you get to really experience normalhood is what would be called like the craft time. Now, those craft times would not be possible had it not been for volunteers. So for me, I remember the first time I had one of them walk in the room, and it wasn't a doctor. It wasn't somebody who was, going to check me and, have to go through, some very painful things. But it was just somebody who wanted to play and play with me, like just a board, a board game, take me to the craft room, just walk. And I remember asking, like, well, what kind of doctor are you? Like what kind of nurse? Like, no, I'm a playmate. I'm a volunteer. I just want to be here with you. And I was like, wow, like just somebody who took the time, Even as a kid, I realized the value of time away from whatever they were doing to be with me. And I saw that as like one of the greatest acts of service. And that really impacted me because she wasn't the only one. There were quite a few. They were all volunteers. And actually, once I was able to like just leave the hospital when I got out of the hospital years later. That's one of the first volunteer jobs I did. I was a volunteen, is what it was called in the hospital. And it meant a lot. I think sometimes people think that you have to have some immense skill or story. And honestly, just that spending time with me, that reading a card, going into actually because I would have needles all over my hands. So just helping me put glue in the little beads so I can do a craft so we can build something together. It meant a lot.
So how long were you in the hospital for?
I was probably consistently for 5 years straight, since the age of 10 until about 15. And it was consistently, I mean, we're talking about months at a time. And it wasn't only at a regular bed, it was many times at the CCU. That's called a cardiac care unit. So it's basically the equivalent to ICU. So it was not only being in a hospital, but when you're in the ICU, it's isolated, right? You can't have visitors, you can't have your siblings, or you can't have, parents. So there was many times where I had to be in the CCU with other babies and other kids, all in one. But it was there were difficult times, but at the same time as, I got to learn a lot. I mean, I had a lot of time to observe.
Then you got your life-changing, surgery. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was a journey. Actually, that it was a very hard journey for me too because I had open heart. I remember when the first time we were discussing the open heart surgery, that was pretty scary. And actually, it wasn't even able to be done at the children's hospital. It had to be done at the adult hospital, Emory University. So it wasn't just that I was no longer there was no craft room. There's no volunteers that come like that to the adult hospital. But having to go, and this is after I had a heart catheterization that didn't it wasn't successful either. So here comes the open heart. And that one didn't turn out to be successful either as well. So and it was very painful for me because they test you right away. They test like, like, hey, did it work? I have been open for about 14 hours and the next day, they go and they test, they put adrenaline, and then my heart went into the same rhythm. But now I'm having to recover from the open heart surgery plus the illness itself because now my heart is still going to those abnormal rhythms. So when the opportunity came for this never been done heart procedure, let's just say that as a kid, it's like at that point, I had two that were unsuccessful, that were not just unsuccessful, but had caused permanent scars in my body. And not outside of that, I had gone through a lot of drugs that, coming in and out. And so it wasn't like, yes, let's sign up for it. I was scared to death. So was my family. But then again, I will say, this is where my doctors in the medical community really had built that rapport, that love. I knew that their hearts were well. I knew that they wanted me to be alive. And it allowed for a very difficult decision to be made that really it ended up working, right? But it wouldn't have happened had it not been because of that trust that had been built over time, even trust being built in light of failure. So when that opportunity came, it was done again with the adult hospital, Emory University. It was with the children's hospital, two hospitals there. It was an experimental surgery. The fear, 100%, because they tested right away, and it didn't respond the way it did. I mean, like I was still like consistently like just watching oversensitive, like over the next few months. How is my heart going to respond? And eventually, basically, it was about a period of 2 years after the surgery that I got my clearance essentially like, hey, you're good. I was 16 Yeah, I was 17 years old, and it was like this whole world had just been opened to me. Like, I don't have to live with this anymore. It wasn't just, and I would say, making a very tough, risky decision in the environment, in the context of that love and that support. There were no guarantees at all. I was already in a heart transplant list. So it was like, okay, like an hour later kind of thing. Like if I did get a heart transplant, it was going to be 10 more years at most. So this actually gave me an opportunity. And again, I'm having to be thinking about this at 14, but being able to later on build from that and later even understand, because I was like, well, why did I have to go through this? Like why did I, and, and the open heart and the failures, but realizing they were not failures. They were actually part of the process to success. Each one of them was progress. And that's really what has shaped my methodology with what we do today with businesses and organizations to get to that innovation.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of go back to something you just said. It was like, why did I have to go through that? And I think oftentimes, either in leaders or in life, we go through things that we don't understand the importance of them until it's like hindsight. So, how did you lean on everything that you went through at a young age? You're like, you know what? I really want to get back into service and give back. How did that shape your future?
I think it was the healing that was very healing for me to be able to, and again at a young age realizing it was something that was always in front of my mind. My parents were very much supportive and in education. They were always held education at a very high regard, and that was something that was both daunting and inspiring at the same time, because I'm like, oh no, I am not with all my peers. So, I'm getting behind, and if I don't study here, and then people would tell me like, the doctor's like, don't worry about that, just worry about breathing. Don't you don't it's okay, you don't have to do the homework. But at the same time I'm like, okay, what happens if I do get my wish? What happens if I do get to live? I'm not going to have the education. I'm not going to be able to do, what am I going to do with my life? So I'm battling through that as a kid, going, always feeling like I catch up, which I believe really started building that resilience and this inward pull of really wanting to go forward. And that's really honestly what helped me balance, I think, in some sort of normalcy that, hey, I can do this. I will be able to do this. And it started with my belief, the support, basically my parents holding that vision in front of me of what education can look like. My grandmother being able to, tell me about her experiences and things, even though I'm in my bed, like, fighting for my life. Having someone and different people hold that vision in front of me, even though the circumstances were not ideal, really helped me balance in the sense of like that pull versus just staying back and letting the circumstances rule.
Yeah, and that's incredibly powerful, that belief that you had instilled. So you went from doing the service, and you said you got into child education and helping other kids. How did that like link to where you are today with leadership coaching?
My goodness. Well, first of all, I never thought I was a leader. That was like, I remember one time when I was sitting in a conference, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be a leader. It's like suddenly everybody said like, all of you here are leaders. I'm like, what? They must not know me. Like somebody actually calling me a leader. And I remember that being a speaker that had come in there. Again, I was doing work with the Interact. I was in high school in the Interact Club. There was a Rotary Junior. And being called a leader was like, wow, you always just open a whole new world. Because what is leadership? Well, leadership is service. It's like, hey, I serve. I want to serve. I like to serve. Does that make me a leader too? And I will say I got addicted to service. So in that service, serving at the university, serving in my high school, like I said, through the Interact Club, it started opening doors that I didn't expect to open. I mean, that's what happens. You serve, is what my mentor Zig Ziglar said. You help other people get what they want. You will be able to get what you want. And that's really what happened. I was elected in high school as the lieutenant governor for the Rotary Club for my area. Again, a kid that I wasn't able to communicate much, right? Because I was in a hospital isolated for so long, and I was able to serve in that way. Then I was able to serve in the university in the Student Government Association as president of the Senate. It's 30,000 students. I was elected. Yeah, and that gave me access to all kinds of leaders. So I was in Atlanta, Georgia State University. I mean, I got to eat with, at that time, it was President Jimmy Carter would come to university. I got to have dinner with him. I got to have dinner with the governor. I got to be exposed to different leadership, different styles of leadership. And I started enjoying this world. I was able to found organizations. And then I founded 3 different community centers because I wanted to serve. So I saw a need. I wanted to do that. That opened up opportunities to collaborate with businesses, with faith communities, with government, with small businesses. And I got to start growing my network from that. And later on, as I became an entrepreneur, well, I had already built some of these relationships. And that's really what it was about. I didn't even realize it was about the relationships I had been building. And the leadership aspect came because people started seeing like, hey, what she's doing is working. So it wasn't because I was like, hey, I'm open for business and leadership. It's like, hey, what are you doing? What's going on here? Especially when it came that time of disruption. We were hit very hard in our industry. And it was a time where people had a lot of questions. There was a lot of uncertainty. And we were hit just as hard, very hard. So I think people seeing that we were able to rise from that opened the doors to other places of influence. For me, it opened the door in DC to be able to then not only have a seat at the table, but started leading in part of the board member for the sector in the K through 12 educational system. Again, this was not something I set out to do. Again, I had been very limited in the school I was able to go to because of my condition. But in serving, it opened the doors to this other room. And this opened the network and it opened relationships. And when it came time to like, hey, can you train our companies to do this? Like, well, yes, I can. I mean, it's simple. And then I started realizing, well, there's a method to this. And I really loved it. I loved serving other leaders. I loved serving leaders that felt many times isolated, leaders that really felt confused, fatigued, the same way I felt when I was going through my heart problem, the same things I was seeing in other people. So I fell in love with the training, the coaching, just to be able to walk it out with the leaders, giving them practical help, not only in how to have those relationships with their teams, but also giving them tactical processes and systems. And which is why also I became a black belt in Lean Six Sigma, which is continuous improvement. So I like making things that were very complicated simple. And that's how I was able to serve. It's like, well, let me translate this to you. And I will say that skill was probably brought in a hospital because a lot of very complicated things were explained. I'm trying to understand it and very complex. I would make it simple, or they would do that for me, right? They showed it to me. The doctors would do that to me. So I was able to then do that out there in the world, taking very complicated, complex things and let's put it back. And going back to my methodology, it is transformation through love and excellence. It is simple, but it is not easy to do. It takes development and grit and dedication and really up leveling your own leadership so you can do both.
Yeah, and you mentioned a lot of key aspects where you said, you didn't really try to get into leadership. You were just doing things. So the fact that you were just taking action and you were service oriented about your action, like serving others, that's really powerful. As people want to get into leadership, I think they need to realize like, hey, it's about doing things and about serving other people and doing it with them and helping them through the problems. And I don't want people to miss that. You also mentioned a period of disruption. So
Yes.
what was that period of disruption that you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, as an entrepreneur, right? I mean, obviously my life was very disrupted with the heart. But outside of that, when I was walking, I had my first position to be a leader. I was also tasked with letting go of 60% of our workforce. And that was because of the disruption of budget freezes, the sudden technology that was coming up called the ebooks, and rumors of sudden change of the standards of the product that we had. So there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a huge shift in demand and I found myself in this position of suddenly, hey, I'm all about like let's love, let's serve, and like what? I have to do what? And then how do we rebuild? So the disruption for me was trying to make sense again, kind of like my heart of a very painful moment for my team, for my people, for the company I served in. And how do we rise from that? And how do we should we even keep our doors open? And that was really the question that shook me. I think there's times when we go through disruption, it just makes you question your entire purpose. Should I even be here? What's my hope? What are we doing? What's the point? So it can be both scary because it's a sudden thing, but it can also be a good wake up call for alignment. And that's where I discovered that.
Over the next couple of years with AI and you have a lot of disruptive technologies coming out, how did you personally attack of like, hey, you know what? I have to let these folks go. How do
Well,
I do it in alignment with my core values? Because I believe in the future we're going to have to go through that again, and it's an unfortunate reality. But how can we help people through that?
Well, in this case, it wasn't my decision, right? I mean, I was coming into that position. So it was something that, again, to serve the organization. And it wasn't just us. I think one of the first things for me as a leader was understanding, like, oh my goodness, it wasn't just like, hey, this company, it was happening in the entire industry and entire sector. The industry did not know how to deal with new digital products being mostly print. Amazon was just coming into like really into the game. I mean, they were a bookseller, but then they were starting to go into the school system. So we were going into the school system. We were content providers in there. So I think one was understanding that it wasn't just us, it wasn't isolated. Because then that also helped me redirect how I presented it to the people as well. Because even for the ones that remained, there's a sense of guilt, right? I mean, like there's a sense of like, well, why did I not go? Why did they go and not us? And it's really both having to assure the person that it was no longer going to be able to walk with us in that journey, and also assuring the ones that stayed there what we were going to do together, because it took both, right? And many people understood. I mean, honestly, and I think a lot of times when things like this happen, they're not a surprise. So there's not like, oh, most people say, "Oh yeah, I saw this coming." So I think a lot of people that you understand what's going on in the company, you see the numbers, you start seeing that the signs of especially manufacturing when machines are not running as much, when there's not as much noise because there's not as many orders coming in. It wasn't something that it was necessarily a surprise. One of the things that I did because of my work in the community was connect them with career centers. Because I had been working in the community, I knew there were career centers with Goodwill. I knew there were career centers even in the Department of Labor. So I knew there was other resources. So even in that, I did my best in what I knew to do for my work in the community to make sure that they were connected to other places where that could help with rent assistance if they needed, with food, things that I didn't have to, things I actually even did outside of the business. But that was just because, again, I had been in the community for a bit, doing with work. And I believe that's important for any leader. You need to understand the resources in the community because this was not something that I wanted to do. I mean, I had to do it, but also was something that was going to save the organization as a whole. But you can still take care of the person with the resources that are available there. Understanding what resources are available for your people is a big deal. And I did that. I connected them with those places that were geographically close to where we were. The next thing I did is because I knew we didn't have quite an answer is I started looking at the retraining, the skills retraining. There were some people, I mean, and there's a couple of things, right? I mean, even when you're doing cuts, you might look at skill, but then you also look at the attitude, the person you can't replace attitude, you can't replace skill. So I will say with some of the people is the attitude because I knew where we were going to go was still going to be a hard place to go. So even though skill level may not have been there, I knew that we could train them in the skills necessary that we didn't know quite yet because they had the right attitude. So I started looking at, well, what were some training opportunities with the Small Business Association. There's quite a bit of training that doesn't cost the business owner anything. I started a collaboration with the technology college because the technology college at the time they provided a lot of certifications that were quick and were cost effective, and there was also tax credits for retraining. So I started learning about that. So even the workforce that I had left, I was able to retrain them, not knowing yet. I don't know where we're going with this, but I know that these skills are necessary overall so that we can adapt quickly. So I started looking at those skills of the future that we needed.
That's amazing that you were able to do that for everybody. that worked with you. And for those of you listening to this and watching this, and you think you're going to have to go through a hard time or a layoff period, I would encourage you to go back and re-listen to that and re-watch that, because, there's the minimum floor and then there's doing right by other people. And so I really appreciate your approach, Hannah, of doing right by people. And since we're talking about doing right by people, there is a methodology that you have that helps people align themselves. And I was wondering if you could talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I spent a lot of time in the hospital. There wasn't much movement I could do. As a matter of fact, movement for me could be very dangerous because it could spike up my heart. Any movement will make my heart go fast. So, the least amount of movement is what I was motivated to do. So, when you talk about leadership, we always talk about leadership is take action. Whatever you do, just take action, take action. So, you can understand that for me, that was again, it was like that inspiring yet daunting. Like, because I can't take action. Like, what can I do? But you know what? We always can do something. And that's where the BEAT program came in. So the BEAT is believe, engage, act, and transform. It took me more time probably to get into the transform part, but I can tell you that starting in that bedside, I had to consistently look at the belief that what was I believing for? That do I get better? And if I do believe I can get better, what is that future going to look like? What is it going to require of me? What is my future self requiring of me to do today? So that's the first part of the belief, right? When I was going through a lot of my heart problems, when I would go into like super, super fast and then it would go into this like abnormal rhythms, even after it got better, I was drained. It was like an energy sucked up. And sometimes I wouldn't even go into those rhythms, but maybe it was like a little flutter and immediately sent me into this panic. And the panic would even have the same effect of this drain that I would experience if I had gone through a full blown episode. And that taught me that a lot of it had to do with what I believed, how I looked at that one little flutter of being, hey, it's just a little flutter versus, let's say, full out episode. So the first part of the BEAT program is believe. Is okay, what are you believing for? I understand the circumstances are telling you this, but what are you believing? What is your current belief in the circumstance? And the other part is engage. Engage with that belief. Engage with start questioning. Well, what does that belief come from? Is this a belief that's working for me? Is this a belief that's helping me? Am I a better person because of this belief? And then when I talk about engage, it's not just engaging with your own belief, but the people that are around you. Engaging with the resources. There was a belief, hey, I can be better. Okay, well, what resources do I have that can be better? What is something, is there a person? Is there someone I can talk to? Is there, there's some form of engaging because it's taking it from the belief in your mind to engaging with that. And then that one small act. And I did learn this, that the smallest of action is greater than that is bigger than the greatest of intentions. That is not just, hey, what the intention is awesome. And we all say like, hey, great intentions, right? But really is that smallest action that we can do. Sometimes for me in the hospital, that meant just getting up. That's all it was. Sometimes it was just sitting down. It was getting up unassisted or being able to brush my own hair, you know? And that's great for that moment, right? And I had to give myself credit for that. But guess what? I'm doing more than that now. So although that was good then, I also had to grow in with the person I was becoming. So taking the smallest of action, also understanding that those compound, and the smallest of action may look different for where you're at today. It could look like for me when it's brushing your hair, or you could go and stand up and talk to 500 people. That is the small action. Yet again, it's the same action and it has value for the overall person you're going to become. And then the transformation is seeing like, this belief, if I engage with it, how does it align with the engagement of it? With that small action I do it, well, is this going to give me the transformation I'm hoping for? Right? Is this a transformation that I'm seeing that if I do this action, it's going to give me this? And if that transformation doesn't add up, then I need to go back to my belief. So it's an alignment. So it's believe, engage, act, transform. So because every action, we're expecting something, right? I mean, we're expecting something. The people that are listening are expecting to get something out of listening out of this. That's why you're turning in. That's why we're here. That's why we're having this conversation. There's an expectation. There's a transformation that we are actively looking for in the different things that we engage. So it is a quick beat. I said take it bite size, believe, engage, act, transform. Check my mind. How can I engage with it? What small action can I do? And what is the transformation that I'm expecting from?
Love that acronym and everything that goes into it. And you make it sound so easy to do. Which if you look at it, you're like, okay, I got it. My belief, got to do engage, got to take the act. And I love the fact that you said this, the smallest action is better than any intention, which is amazing because I think a lot of people have a lot of intentions, but not a lot of follow through. Now, let's talk about that transformation piece a little bit because you mentioned that if you don't get the outcome or the transformation you're looking for, you kind of have to go back to your belief. Should I start with my belief or should I start with the transformation that I'm looking for?
Oh, that's an awesome question. Was whichever works both. Sometimes it's easier to think about like, hey, just checkpoint. What am I believing right now in this? Because suddenly you get, hit over the head. You're just going through life and then like, something happens. Oh, whoa, what did I believe? What do I believe about the situation right now? So that's where it starts. But sometimes there is like at the end of the day, and this is what I do encourage at the end of the day, are the activities or is what I did today leading me to the person I want to be? I mean, what is my priority? You got to know that. You got to know your purpose because you're aligning to something. The belief is part of a greater thing, right? The belief is part of you. So overall, does it align with your purpose? I mean, if you are seeking to right now be the best, the most present mom in your family or the most present dad in your family, is me spending 8 hours on my cell phone, seeking for other stuff going to lead to the transformation of that? And no, it's like, no, okay, so what do I believe about the phone? Why am I doing that? So taking it back, right? So checking even if I'm gonna do, like basically like a goal setting. If I want to lose a lot of weight, but also gonna want to win the hot dog marathon or whatever, it doesn't align. I'm not gonna get that transformation with the belief. And then what happens? We end up with dysfunction. And that's what we see all the time. It's like we're expecting an outcome, but yet our belief, and how do I know what I believe? Because I got to look at my action. Is my action is going to be aligned to my belief. So sometimes we do work it backwards because when we're looking at moving frontwards, right? When we move frontwards, we look backwards. Essentially, like, what is that end going to look like? What are my actions telling me? Because sometimes it's like, well, I don't know what I believe about that. Well, look at your actions. So it's easy. It's believe, engage, act, transform. Or if I'm seeing a transformation, okay, this is what's happening with me right now. I'm not spending the time I would like to with my family. That is at the end, the transformation that happened. So what were my actions that led me to that? Well, what was the engagement? Where did that come from? And that goes back to the belief. Okay, I don't like this transformation right now. So I gotta check my belief so then I can engage and I can act and I can transform.
For anybody out there who's watching this or listening to this, and you're like, you know what? I've had a lot of adversity in my life. I've had a lot of different things. I don't think it's quite as bad as you may think it is, or it is as bad as you think it is. But if you just take a beat, right? If you just kind of take this acronym and you implement it, I think you're going to be a much better off place tomorrow than you are today. So, Hannah, I really appreciate you sharing this with everybody because it could be applicable no matter where you're at, whether you're starting out in leadership or you just need to improve your everyday life. Just take a beat. So thank you for sharing that.
Take a breath, a beat. Yeah, thank you.
So my last question then for you today is there anything that we didn't talk about that you were like, you know what? I really have a burning desire to talk about this and you didn't even ask me.
I think what you just said right now in the adversity, because a lot of times we do it's easy to go along with whatever adversity or feel like we have to be a result of our circumstances. And I do want to say like, hey, we're humans. We're humans first. And the amazing thing about a human being is that we have authority. We have authority no matter the circumstance, no matter your position or any part. And that is, we are born to be leaders. That leadership has to be developed. But in light of a lot of uncertainty, is knowing that you do have the authority, you do have the control no matter what. And that definitely one of the greatest gifts that you have, and you're not done, is because you're breathing today. So go out there and kill it.
And I know I said that was my last question, but you said some things that made me believe something. I was just going to ask you, are you a person of faith? And if you are, how has that played and shaped your leadership model and your life?
Oh, yes, it's everything. Faith is where you do all you cannot, you do all you can do, and really God does all you cannot do. For me, faith is, fuel for aligning at this hour. So that's what faith is. What is the fuel I need to align at this hour? Because things look like a big mess, chaos. I have no idea where to go. Definitely, it starts with faith and it starts with being. And why I believe in humanity is because we were created in the image of our divine creator. He's given us all authority. He's giving us the power. He's given us the ability to transform. We're the only ones that can choose to transform and transform. Nobody else can do, no animal can do that. No other thing can do that. Not even like now the computers cannot do the transformation. We're the ones that fed it. We're the ones that created it. So we are all made to be mini creators because we're made after the great creator. So I do believe 100% that we can create the businesses, not the attitude, the teams that we need because that is in our divine DNA and we're called to do it. We're empowered to do it. We're equipped to do it. And we need to do it, but do it together because that's we were also made to do this life together, not by ourselves.
And I really appreciate you sharing that. I encourage you to reach out and talk with Hannah and check the descriptions. There's going to be all the links to her and everything that she has. And she also wrote a book called Hustle with Heart. And I was wondering if you could take a brief moment and talk about that.
Oh yeah, it's a bite size. It's a small little book. And not only is it small, but it's meant for like, one, for those of you that don't like to read or can't read or don't have the time or got like 5 kids like I do, always requesting and things as a quick bite size where we're just going to work on believe one day. We're just going to work on engage another day, act, transform on another one. I gave you there a small quote to just, kind of bathe in that, suck it in, like, just make it part of you and just go again one small step at a time. So that's why it's Hustle with Heart, 52 mini shifts to maximize your impact. And it's about shifting because that's what we do. Life is so we wish life was just one straight line all the way to the top, but no, life is, we got little ups and downs, but you know what? We can enjoy the ups just as much as the downs. And it's about shifting every time and getting to the destination that we want to see.
Hannah, thank you for stopping by. And thank you all for listening and watching. And thank you for being here.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Thanks for having me.